Martha Elizabeth Moxley was born on August 16, 1960, in San Francisco, California. San Francisco is one of the most important cities in the state of California. It currently has a population of almost 900,000 people, and it's there that the famous Golden Gate Bridge is located. Martha was the daughter of David and Dorothy Moxley, who, in addition to her, had an eldest son named John Moxley. The girl had a good and peaceful childhood. Her parents were attentive and loving, and besides, her family was very rich, and she never lacked for anything. Coming from an affluent family, Martha had the best education money could buy, attending good schools during her childhood and early adolescence. In 1974, the family moved from San Francisco, California, to the city of Greenwich, Connecticut. Greenwich, unlike San Francisco, is not a big city. On the contrary, compared to San Francisco, the city is considered a neighborhood and currently has a little more than 60,000 inhabitants. However, Greenwich is a popular destination for wealthy families looking for a home. The 5,000-kilometer change that would upset any other teenager doesn't seem to have bothered Martha. It is said that the girl was excited about the trip, and because she had a certain ease in making friends, she couldn't wait to meet new people. In the city, the family bought a house in the Bell Heaven neighborhood, a private neighborhood where tranquility reigns. Well, at least that was everyone thought. In that same neighborhood, the Skackel family lived in a house across the street from the Moxley family. The Skackels, as well as the Moxley, were also very wealthy, and not only that, they were very influential. They had close connections with another very influential family in the United States, the Kennedys. The Skackels and the Kennedys were cousins through the marriage of Ethel Skackel and Robert F. Kennedy, one of the brothers of the famous former U.S. President John F. Kennedy. The Skackel family consisted of the widower Rustin and his 7 children, 6 males and 1 female. Rustin was widowed in 1973 when he lost his wife Anne to brain disease. According to sources, after the loss of his wife, Rustin began to seek solace in alcohol, which shook his relationship with his children a little. But despite that, he struggled to take care of the children alone. Of Rustin's 7 children, there were 2 who were important figures in the story, Thomas and Michael Skackel. Thomas was 17 at the time of the events, while Michael was 15. Because they were neighbors, Martha ended up befriending the Huston children, especially Thomas and Michael. Later, during an interview, Dorothy, the girl's mother, said she was unaware that her daughter had befriended Huston Skackel's sons. As the days passed, Martha began to like Thomas and grow closer to him. It's unclear if they ever had anything or not. But in her journal, Martha wrote that Thomas kept patting her as if he wanted something. In her diary, she wrote that she, Thomas, Michael, and a few more friends were in Thomas' car, and as he drove, he would put his hand on her knee and sometimes his arm around her. In that same journal, Martha also wrote about her frustrations with Michael, Thomas' younger brother. According to her, Michael kept telling her that she didn't really like his brother and that she was just playing with the boy's feelings. Apparently, Michael liked Martha, but she liked his brother, Thomas, and that made Michael angry because he wasn't reciprocated. On the night of October 30, 1975, Halloween's Eve, Martha, Thomas, Michael, and a few friends dressed up and went out together to trick-or-treat that night. It was night when the young men of Greenwich roamed the streets playing pranks. Usually, the night never resulted in anything more serious than a lawn full of toilet paper, but tonight, that would change. The hours passed and Martha didn't return home. At around 4 a.m., Dorothy, the young woman's mother, called her daughter's friends who she knew and knew were with her that night. However, due to the time, no one answered the calls. With that, the woman decided to wait until dawn to call again, and thought that maybe it wouldn't even be necessary, because she believed her daughter would return home sooner, but she didn't. Early in the morning, Dorothy called her daughter's friends again. This time, a friend of Martha's answered and said she last saw the young woman with Thomas Skackel. Dorothy then went to the Skackels, and when she knocked on the door, she was answered by Michael, who told her that he hadn't seen Martha since last night. Shortly after noon, a friend of Martha's named Sheila made a horrific discovery. Sheila found Martha, already lifeless, under a pine tree that was on the same lot as the Moxley family home. The young woman was lying on her stomach. She was wearing a jacket, and her pants along with her underwear had been lowered. Upon learning of this terrible discovery, Martha's mother and brother were in despair. Just so you understand, the young woman had not been found before due to the huge area of land that their house was built, even though it was within the limits of her family's property. In the private neighborhood of Belhaven, in addition to the houses being huge, they are located on large lots, some of which are even bigger than farms. In addition, each plot has good vegetation, ranging from a garden to large trees. Because of this, neither the girl's mother nor her brother could see her under a pine tree on the property's land. The police were notified immediately and they quickly arrived at the scene. David, Martha's father, who was on a business trip and still didn't know anything, arrived shortly after the police. It is said that when he learned what had happened to his daughter, he was devastated. The police began investigations at the scene. In a little search of the area, they found a broken metal golf bat, and a little further on, they found the other part of the bat that was missing. To the detectives, there was a good chance this was the murder weapon, but to be sure, both the bat and Martha's body would have to be taken to forensics. The crime shocked the community of Belhaven and the small town of Greenwich. Everyone wondered how something like this could have happened there, and who was responsible. Quickly, the case involving the wealthy Moxley family had repercussions throughout the state of Connecticut and later the United States. And this case would resonate even more and for several years after the police pointed out who was the main suspect for the crime. During examinations of Martha's body, the coroners found that she suffered severe blows to the head region. Also, according to them, there were some punctures in the young woman's body, which were probably made by the tip of a broken bat and while she was unconscious due to the blows. They also said that although she was found with her pants and underwear down, there were no signs of a forced relation. According to detectives, whoever committed the crime did so with the intention of putting the victim in a humiliating position, in an attempt to directly affect the young woman's dignity, even after taking her life. To them, this was a clear sign of a crime of passion. Subsequently, a forensic examination of the golf bat found near the scene of the crime showed that it was compatible with the young woman's injuries. With that, the detectives started an investigation to try to track this golf bat to its owners, and they succeeded. The bat belonged to a collection of the Skacko family, indicating that the person responsible for the crime was probably a member of the family. At the time, Rushton Skacko said that the golf club used in the crime did indeed belong to the family, but that they used to leave the bats in an area where anyone could take them if they wanted. Detectives called all the youths who were with Martha hours before she was found lifeless to testify. According to the friends, Martha and Thomas started to stay, and then they walked away from the group by going behind a fence that was next to the swimming pool in the Skacko family's backyard. Called in by detectives for an explanation, Thomas said he actually stayed with Martha, but that later, around 9:30 p.m., he said goodbye to her and went to his house, where he watched some TV and then went to his room to finish his schoolwork on Abraham Lincoln. However, in conversation with Thomas' teachers, they denied the boy, telling detectives that they had not given any work regarding Abraham Lincoln in recent months. With that, the detectives decided to subject Thomas to the polygraph test, better known as a lie detector test. The boy went through the process twice, and both times he passed. Another potential suspect the detectives interrogated was Kenneth Littleton. Kenneth was an employee of the Skacko family. He had just been hired, and the night of the crime was his first night at the Skacko house. Despite Kenneth telling detectives that he had no idea who Martha Moxley was, he failed several lie detector tests. However, there was no evidence directly linking him to the crime, and as such, he was ruled out as a suspect. Another potential suspect who was investigated at the time was Michael Skacko, Thomas' young brother. According to detectives, Martha Moxley was attacked at around 10 p.m. while returning from the Skacko property to her home. The detectives then questioned Michael about where he would be around that time. Michael told detectives that he left the house around 9:15 p.m. and drove to his cousin's house, returning home around 11 p.m. the detectives were almost certain that the person responsible for the crime was a member of the Skako family. However, as I have already mentioned, the family was very rich and influential, and this made the police work very difficult. The boy's father, Rustan Skako, would not let the authorities have access to their mental records. He also stopped cooperating with detectives and kept them away from his family. Because of this, it was practically impossible to get more evidence that could link one of the Skakos to the crime. Martha's family did everything they could to keep the case from getting cold, but it was no use, and a short time later, the case was shelved. For the next few years, Thomas and Michael Skako carried out with their normal lives, taking family trips and enjoying everything their money could buy, including their freedoms. In 1991, 16 years after the crime, William Kennedy Smith, nephew of former President John F. Kennedy, was arrested on charges of forcing relations with a woman. William's arrest has returned the Martha Moxley case to the spotlight after rumor of his alleged involvement in the crime began to surface. William was tried and acquitted of the crime he was responding to, and the rumors about him being involved in the Martha Moxley case proved to be unfounded. However, this new repercussion caused the police to reopen the case, and this time, all suspicion fell on Michael Skako. This happened because Michael, in the years that passed after the crime, revealed himself to be an unstable and violent person, and for the detectives, these were characteristics of a person capable of taking the life of another. But in fact, according to sources, Michael was already unstable and violent before the crime. According to these sources, after the death of his mother, Michael began to drink and use narcotics, becoming increasingly rebellious. In 1978, 3 years after the crime, he was caught driving while intoxicated, and so that would be not a lawsuit, his father decided to send him to a reform school where he stayed for 2 years. Michael is said to have run away from this reformatory a few times and was always getting into trouble there. After completing 2 years, as I mentioned, he finished his studies and entered a private college, where he also got into fights with several people. Back in 1991, in parallel with the police investigation, Rustan Skako, Michael's father, hired private investigators to carry out an independent investigation into the crime. Rustan's goal was to clear his family's name once and for all by proving that his children had nothing to do with the crime. However, things didn't go as he had planned. 2 private detectives participated in this parallel investigation: Jim Murphy, a former FBI agent, and his assistant, Willis Krebs, a former lieutenant of the NYPD. When the 2 men interviewed Thomas and Michael Skako about where they were on the night of the murder, they discovered that the 2 had lied to the police in their initial statements. Thomas revealed that it was not 9:30 p.m. when he had last seen Martha outside his house, but it was actually almost 10 p.m. He also said that before he went back inside his house, he and Martha touched each other in the backyard of their house. According to the detectives, Thomas burst into tears after admitting this, but his attorney cut him off before he could say more. Michael, on the other hand, told private investigators that on the night of the crime, when he returned from his cousin's house, he didn't go straight to bed, as he had told the police at the time. He said he actually climbed the tree outside Martha Moxley's bedroom window, where he touched himself imagining things with her. Upon learning of these new revelations from these children, Rustan Skako asked private detectives to keep it a secret. He also talked to Thomas and Michael so they wouldn't talk about it to anyone else. Rustan knew that if this new information got to authorities, his children would be in trouble. And of course, as you already know, this information was leaked, and in addition to publication of some books that addressed the case and were very successful throughout the 90s, finally in 1998, a grand jury and an investigator were assigned to review the case of Martha Moxley. Later, a judge named George Thin saw that there was enough evidence to charge Michael Skako with the crime. Michael was arrested on January 9, 2000, but was released shortly afterwards on $500,000 bail, and was released on bail until his trial date. After Michael was charged, authorities began pre-trial hearings, in which several witnesses participated. Among these witnesses was a man named Gregory Coleman, who attended the same boarding school as Michael Skako at the same time. Gregory claimed that Michael told him that he was responsible for the crime, and that he would get away with this as he was a member of the Kennedy family. Gregory also stated that Michael had said that he was trying to be with Martha. but she didn't respond, and that's why he decided to break up with her. Gregory Coleman agreed to give the same testimony at the trial that would take place in the year 2002. However, he was unable to do so as he died in the year 2001 due to excessive use of narcotics. Of course, this generated rumors that the Skakos with their money and influence would have ended and simulated the situation, but nothing has been proven. Michael Skako's trial began on May 7, 2002 in Norwalk, Connecticut. As it involved American high society families, the case had a lot of repercussions in the country, and everything that happened in the trial of the main suspect for the crime was reported by the media at the time. The trial lasted a month, and during that time, there was no talk of anything else in the United States. During the trial, the main alibi used by Michael was that he was at his cousin's house at the time of the crime. The prosecution presented several pieces of evidence and some witnesses for the prosecution. On June 7, 2002, the trial ended and Michael was found guilty of the crime and sentenced to 20 years in prison. His defense appealed several times against the prosecution, but to no avail. In January 2003, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Michael's cousin and nephew of former President John F. Kennedy, wrote an article that was published in a famous newspaper, insisting that Michael's prosecution and arrest was unjust and that it was the media's fault. A few years later, Robert wrote a book defending his cousin. On August 24, 2003, Tony Bryant, a former classmate of Michael's, told Michael's lawyers that two of his friends were visiting Bellhaven the night of the murder, confessed to him that they were the ones who took Martha's life. With that, Michael's lawyers filed an appeal requesting that a new trial be held. However, the judge in charge denied the request. For many, Tony Bryant was paid by the Skakos to make up this story. If that's true, it's never been proven. In later years, while Michael was in prison, his lawyers filed numerous appeals in an attempt to overturn his conviction and get a new trial. On September 27, 2010, Michael Skako's legal team filed a new appeal, arguing that his attorney Mike Sherman, who defended him at trial, did not make a competent defense. Michael's new attorney, Herbert Santos, argued that Mikey Sherman should have called a witness who could confirm that Michael was at his cousin's house at the time of the crime. In 2013, a Connecticut judge ordered a retrial for Michael Skako, declaring that his original attorney had not effectively represented him. As a result, Michael was released after posting $1.2 million bond and would answer for the crime in freedom until his trial. He would also have to meet certain conditions. He must be monitored with a GPS device. He must have no contact with the victim's family. He must have periodic check-in by phone, and he must not leave the state of Connecticut unless permission is granted. This decision to retrial and release Michael Skako on bail took Martha's Moxley family by surprise. Over the years, they fought for justice to be done and the perpetrator behind bars, but that didn't last long. In December 2016, the Connecticut Supreme Court upheld Michael Skako's conviction, stating that his conviction was the result of overwhelming evidence presented by prosecutors during his trial. In January 2018, prosecutors in the case asked the Connecticut Supreme Court to revoke Michael's bail and return him to prison after the remainder of his sentence. However, on May 4th, the Connecticut Supreme Court overturned Michael's conviction and ordered a new trial. The Supreme Court alleged that Michael's first attorney, Mike Sherman, didn't provide effective assistance, and as a result, Michael Skako had an unfair trial. Michael's retrial was supposed to be scheduled in the next few years, but on October 30, 2020, Chief State Attorney Richard Colangelo informed the Superior Court that Michael would not be tried again. That way, Michael will be free and will no longer answer for the crime. Simple as that. Martha's Moxley family did everything they could to get the decision reversed, but the Skakos' money, power, and influence spoke louder. Martha's father, David, passed away in 1988 at the age 57 to a heart attack. He left without even having the opportunity to bring some justice to his daughter. Dorothy Moxley, who is now nearly 90 years old, said during an interview that they did everything they could to keep Michael in prison, but that now there is nothing else they can do, and that she just wants to rest. This crime had a lot of repercussion in the United States, and is still seen as a controversial, as it involves American high society families, including the Kennedys, which some even call the royal family, because most of its members are directly linked to politics. The case is still a matter of debate on this day, in which some people believe that Michael did not act alone and had help from someone close to him, perhaps his brother Thomas. Other people believe that Michael is innocent and that he was in fact wronged. And you? Do you believe that Michael is guilty or innocent? Did he act alone or did he have help? Well, in any case, this case just shows us that money can buy anything anywhere in the world. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I see you next time.